Now we are going to talk about one of the simplest model you can create by putting all these software development processes together. It's called the waterfall model. This is actually one of the first process models proposed. So in waterfall model, what we do is we put all of these software engineering processes one after the other in a logical sequence. So this is our waterfall model. So don't worry about the phases here. We have 5 activities, 5 phases: requirement engineering, design, coding, implementation, and testing. They just divide some phases a little bit more, like design. They divide the design phase in system design and program design, and also they divide the testing phase as unit testing, system testing, acceptance testing. So if you consider just 5 phases, so that means the 5 phases will go sequentially one after the other. So that means you will do your requirement first, and then you will do your design, and then you will do implementation, and then testing, and at last it will go to the maintenance phase. So that means the output of one phase will be the input to the next phase. So you can see the phases here do not overlap with each other. So there is no overlap between the phases. So that's why this development process can be considered as a sequential flow in the waterfall. So that's why they name it as waterfall model. So when we talk about waterfall model, this is actually the classical waterfall model. So there is different waterfall model. So the first one was classical waterfall model. This is the first one. So when we talk about waterfall model, that's the classical model. So this classical waterfall model is actually an idealistic model for software development. This model is actually very simple, so it could be considered as the basis for other software development lifecycle models. So this waterfall model actually works well for smaller projects and projects where requirements are well understood. So if your requirements are well understood, then you can use waterfall model. And the advantages of waterfall model is, the first advantage is it's very simple and it's easy to understand. Pretty much anybody will be able to say that this makes sense. And also it's very straightforward and logical. And the other advantage is every stage in this model is clearly defined. So this model has very clear and well understood milestone. Okay, so process, actions, and results at every stage are very well documented. However, classical waterfall model also suffers from various shortcomings. Honestly, we cannot use it in real project, but we use other software development lifecycle models which are based on the classical waterfall model. So that's why classical waterfall model is important. So now the drawback is, the first thing is there is no feedback path, right? It assumes that no error is ever committed by developers during any phase, so therefore it does not incorporate any mechanism for error correction. And the other real drawback is it's difficult to accommodate change request. So this model assumes that all the customer requirements can be completely and correctly defined at the beginning of the project, but actually customers requirements keep on changing with time, right? So that's why it's difficult to accommodate any change request after the requirement specification phase is complete. And there is one more problem, that's no overlapping of phases. So this model actually recommends that new phase can start only after the completion of the previous phase, but in real project this cannot be maintained. One other issue with waterfall model is that we get the product at the end, right? You cannot take benefit of early release or getting value during the development process. That's one more drawback of this waterfall model. So the question here is when to use this model. So, well, if your project or the product that you are working on is very predictable and it's a repeatable work, then waterfall model will be a decent fit for this kind of work. And also, waterfall model is now hardly ever used as a solo process model. It's mostly used with with other prototype process model alongside other prototype process model.